We have our inaugural kickoff here with our Closing Strong series. Tara McGowan and I are going to be interviewing people who are going to be key to us closing strong and winning this election in the next few weeks. And so we're starting today with one of our all-time faves, Anderson Clayton, North Carolina Party Chair. Anderson, welcome.
Thanks for having me all.
So listen, for those who don't know, I mean, as we've discussed, I mean, North Carolina was, of all the battleground states, was the one that we didn't win in 2020. You had the hardest job of all the battleground state chairs. We all considered this as a real opportunity, in part because Mark Robinson, your gubernatorial candidate on the Republican side, was just as extreme or more so than Trump. And so there was going to be incredible opportunity this year for you to make gains and have a really good election. Give us an update. I mean, how's it going? How do you feel? How do things feel just a few weeks before, early voting begins? And, are you happy with where things are?
I think the excuse my voice in the way that it sounds right now because we just got back from the DNC convention, but I think the energy on the ground is electric. I think that people are really excited to see the momentum that North Carolina has been able to build up, and I finally think that the polls are starting to tell what we've been noticing on the ground for the last year and a half, that people are angry. Republicans have done far too much in our state to take advantage of it, and people are ready to get to the polls in November to defeat Mark Robinson, Donald Trump, Dan Bishop, Michelle Morrow, and all of our state legislative candidates that have tied themselves to him, quite frankly.
And just so everybody knows, the polls in the last few weeks, almost every poll has Kamala Harris either tied or ahead in North Carolina. There's been a real shift. It's actually been one of our best performing states in polling over the last, since she became the candidate. So congratulations on that, Anderson.
We don't ride the roller coaster down here, though, Simon. And like they were also really bad a few months ago too, and so
Yeah.
we are trying to make sure that we're doing everything ground wise to make sure that the 74,000 votes that we lost by in 2020 carry us back. I think it's great for people to get excited about polls right now. I actually think that they're one of the worst things in the entire world in some ways too, for how like lack of motivation or like they kind of lull people into this like, oh, I don't have to worry. And I'm like, no, you should worry. Everyone should be worried. Everyone should be running around like their pants are on fire right now, in my opinion, trying to make sure that they have a voter registration form in their purse that you're carrying with you to every grocery store line you're in. If you're asking any person that's talking to you randomly, your first question back to them should be, are you registered to vote?
I couldn't agree more, Anderson, about the polling. And I think the only thing is like they're always close, right? Whether we're up a few points or down a few points, it's like the
And
message.
there's always a margin of error. And I'm like,
Exactly. And as my friend Mike Podhorser always likes to say, it's about the margin of effort, right? It's like exactly what you said, do all of the work. So in the years that I have been working in politics and campaigns, North Carolina has kind of been a bit of a heartbreak story since 2008 when Obama turned it blue, and not Obama, but the work and the grassroots energy on the ground and everything. And, we've come so close. And yet, of course, you guys have had really a lot of success on the gubernatorial side. I hope and believe that will be true again this time. But there's also a history of, I think, ticket splitting and just lower turnout of different constituency groups. And it comes down to resources often. So I'm really curious, do you guys feel like you're getting the resources, especially from the national side and the presidential campaign and the energy around the presidential, that's needed to get as many people on the rolls and turned out?
We are getting more investments than we ever have before as a state like North Carolina. And I think that they are preparing hard to make sure that they're looking at us as a seventh battleground state, which means that we are getting more resources. It was earlier than it ever was since 2020. And I think that what they're doing right now is making sure that we've got offices across the state. They utilized county party offices that were already infrastructure here, that we had been, honestly, county parties that had offices for almost 5 or 6 years in the state. The coordinated came in and are helping pay their rent right now. And so it's a real partnership, I would say, between trying to make sure the infrastructure that we had was able to carry through with what the campaign needed this year. And then they're also adding staff onto that ground too. So I'd say that we are getting the resources and the time and the energy that we did not get and that we did not receive in 2020 that we needed in a timely manner.
I would love to hear kind of your take on like ticket splitting though in North Carolina, like a history of folks that might go Democratic for the governor's race, knowing that you guys have a really competitive one right now and an absolutely horrific Republican candidate running in Mark Robinson, and how you guys sort of adjust for that as you think about that when you're talking to voters at the doors or on the phones or over text message.
I think we just don't ignore voters. I mean, typically there would be people that would say, well, we don't go talk to Trump voters, or people that would say, like, we are voting for Donald Trump. And I'm like, all right, well, have you asked them about the governor's race yet? And I think that that needs to be everybody's mentality, is that, like, down ballot people in North Carolina, I do think that they vote a lot of times for the people versus the party. And a lot of times Republican candidates do a really good job of getting out to these communities, introducing themselves to people, making the case. And that's traditionally been the case. This year, Democrats have been doing that. So you'll see people like Braxton Winston, who's running for commissioner of labor in North Carolina, and Josh Stein, who's running for governor, out at Lumbee Homecoming a few months ago, right? Where they were walking in a 2.5 mile parade line, shaking everybody's hand in that community, because we know right now the number one place that people are getting their information, it's not on a television screen or on a phone screen. It's really coming from your community. It's coming from the people around you. It's coming from the folks in your life that are saying, this person is someone I believe in. It's someone you should believe in too. I would say the reason why we're so concerned about that, and the reason why we're doing that this year, is because I think that we've got to build back, relationships with people one step at a time. And that means that you may not vote for a Democrat at the top of the ticket, but you could vote for one down ballot. And in future cycles, that's going to hopefully lead you to voting for one at the top of the ticket, because you now know a locally elected Democrat. The ways in which that in some of my communities, I feel like information silos and Fox News and places have just ruined them. It's because of the fact that people don't know these folks and they don't know these candidates. But that is one way, I guess. Otherwise, we're also talking to them about policies. I mean, like, one of my organizers the other day, literally, Sarah O'Brien, who's my organizing director, she texted me and she goes, we knocked a house with 2 Trump signs on it. And as soon as we left, they took them down. Like, I don't think that people are, they just haven't been talked to. Like, there's so much misinformation around. Like, the biggest power that we could have would be on the doors this year. And I just think that so many people are scared to knock doors and scared to talk to people around them, that might be the one reason why we don't. Right.
I've been working and helping you since November last year. I always believed that this was a state that we could win. I'm so proud of what you've been able to do, because one of the missing pieces in North Carolina, so we just didn't have the on the ground infrastructure and the kind of investment that you've been making and doing what you just said, which is talking to people, right? In the way that we know how to talk to people. How do you feel about where your field organization is at this point? And also talk a little bit about what's going on with young people and what's happened with the dynamics since Kamala became our candidate.
Yeah, well, thank you so much to Simon and your community for all that you have done for us, because North Carolina would not be where it is today without people that did invest early in us. And I think that's so important. Every bit of what we've been able to do, building up a field operation on the ground, has been able to make sure that we're knocking doors in counties that haven't had doors knocked in them. And those 74,000 votes that I referenced earlier in 2020 that we lost by, it's 42 votes per every precinct in every county. Barack Obama only won our state by 4 votes per precinct in every county. And when you look at the idea of where do those votes come from, they come from all over North Carolina. We're not a state like Georgia or Texas, or, well, not technically Texas necessarily in that sense, but they do have a Houston and Dallas, but where you've got like one major metropolitan area that really is the largest portion. So like a Michigan, right, with Detroit, like that's 42% of their population right there, just in a Detroit metro area alone. That's not North Carolina. North Carolina is a state that has 59% of its population actually that still lives in a rural community. And I think that the important part of that is knowing that you can't just chase the Mecklenburgs where Charlotte is, the Wakes where Raleigh is. You've got to chase the Wilsons, right, where Wilson is. You've got to chase the Cherokee counties where Murphy is. And you've got to chase the places where Democrats are coming out. And our field team has been able to do that this year. And that's an operation where typically in the past, the state party has taken on the mindset of that you've only got to be in 20 counties in the state and that's it. And we've made it so no, you need to be operating in all 100 counties. There needs to be someone, a candidate, a campaign, a county party that's out there talking to voters in every single community. And so we've been able to do that. Our organizers are out knocking doors this weekend. The greatest joy of my life was getting to see in a year from our calendar, our organizing calendar, from going to have one canvas every Saturday to having 15 every Saturday in different parts of the state. And we were also able, we knocked around 10,000 doors this last weekend alone. When you look at minivan and the number, top 10 places in the country for where activity happened this last weekend, 2 of them are coming out of North Carolina, both Raleigh and both Charlotte. So we're excited about the ground game. And we think that's what's going to win us this election this year. not just for the presidency, but also for the governor's race and for some competitive state legislative races to give him back that veto power that we need going into 2025.
And Anderson, there are so many young people in the state, and that have been a community that perhaps we have not done as well as we've needed to in the past. Can you talk a little bit about what's happened on the ground since Kamala's become the candidate with young people?
A wave of excitement amongst young folks, but also the real thing that we've done this year in North Carolina that I'm so proud of is that we've been able to lead a youth organizing program where we've been able to put 30 college campus fellows across the UNC system and across college campuses outside of the UNC system as well. So our HBCUs, looking at both public and private in the state, and then also looking at other MSIs, minority serving institutions in North Carolina, and also making sure that we're reaching out to people. We believe that young folks should be organizing young people. Theodore Nollert, who's the city councilman out of Chapel Hill, he won his race, one of the youngest people to ever win a city council race in Chapel Hill last year in 2023, is actually leading that program this year for us. And so very excited to be able to have folks that have just recently been working with young people to also be able to leading this program. But Theo helped up voter turnout for UNC students by 2% in his city council race that only lasted around 6 weeks for him. And so we're really excited to see what he can do with the amount of resources that we're going to be able to put into college campuses this year.
That's fantastic. Anderson, I have to ask, because our newsroom at Courier in North Carolina, Cardinal and Pine, had been covering very closely the state legislature's bills and horrific work that they passed on an abortion ban in the state of North Carolina. You're in a state where people have seen this happen up close. The Project 2025 agenda starting to go in place in states like yours. And we know that abortion is one of the most mobilizing and salient issues for voters of all parties, actually. And we know the majority of voters support abortion access. So I'm curious if you're still feeling that that is really one of the top and most salient issues that you're hearing about from voters who maybe haven't been paying attention or haven't been voting regularly in the state, as something that could be really mobilizing, given how close the folks in your state have been to this threat.
I think so, and that's something where I tell people even before the big switch up, like, I love Kamala Harris. I'm so excited she's going to be our next president. But I also think that even before that happened, folks were negating the anger that was on the ground in North Carolina. And maybe it was just me that was seeing it, but I was like, man, I see it and I feel it everywhere I was going last year, of just the like, how dare a state legislature feel like they've got this much power and don't ever have to answer to the people of North Carolina. Because it was abortion rights, right? It was abortion rights in the term of taking us to a 12-week abortion ban, a 10-week medical abortion ban in the state. Even after, we had seen abortions rise 37% in North Carolina, because we were one of the last states for access in the South to it, besides Virginia, once Roe had fallen. It is also so much more than abortion that's on the ballot too, and that the state legislature has done this year. And I think especially for places like rural North Carolina right now, we're talking about abortion, but we're also talking about the fact that this state legislature stripped healthcare in general, or wanted to, from 600,000 people this last year, because they wanted to legalize gambling after being lobbied from casinos that are coming to us from Las Vegas right now. And I'm like, these folks are not people that represent North Carolina, or that represent the rural economies and that want to revitalize them, that make up the majority of this state right now. All they care about is padding their pockets, more consolidation in our state, and more corruption. And when you look at that, I'm like, no Republican unaffiliated that I know is buying into that right now. And we're even seeing it at our county commissioner levels. We're seeing good Republicans, right, that have been ousted from their local parties because they don't agree, or they don't have the Trump mentality that some of these other people have. And we're seeing it at the local level in the county commissioner races right now. Like, I've got my dad, for an example, he's running for county commissioner in Person County. And there are people that are coming up to him that I would have never. It's an R+20 county. So, we know where our odds are in this place. But I've had people coming up to him that I never would have thought, that were like, I'm looking at you this year because the 5 Republicans that sit on our county commission right now have pissed me off so badly. Like, they're just not doing their jobs. And I'm like, maybe we'll get some local Democrats in some of these rural communities, because people are honestly just pissed off at the fact too that Republicans have taken so much from them in every walk of life, to me.
I do think that North Carolina, like Arizona and Wisconsin, this year the backlash to the extremist legislatures in these three states and their overreach, their extremism, their interfering in people's lives. There's something similar going on in all three states now where I think so much is possible. It's not just the top of the ticket, it's this sense that in the state, this extremism that is manifest in the legislature, in your up and down the Republican ticket. I mean, talk a little bit about Mark Robinson, if you could, just for folks who may not really be checked in and understand, what you're up against in this election at the gubernatorial level.
Yeah, Mark Robinson, for those of you that may not get it in this little clip that I've got, you can go to realmarkrobinson.com. It's an opposition website that the state party has created to make sure that people understand every single thing that he has ever said about any issue that you could care about. But Mark Robinson is someone who had never run for public office before and became our lieutenant governor when he went, or after he went to a Greensboro city council meeting. And, after the Parkland shooting in Florida had happened, unfortunately, and said, it's not the guns that are killing people, it's the people that are killing people, and told folks that they would not take away his AR-15. And that's how Mark Robinson sort of made his foray into North Carolina politics. The Republican Party picked him up out of that city council meeting and were like, wow, this is somebody that talks a lot about gun rights. We want to make sure that he's elevated to a platform where he can do that on. No one else looked into all the heinous and hurtful things that Mark Robinson had said in his past, including the fact that he has denied the Holocaust, believes in a total abortion ban, thinks lizard people are running the government right now, doesn't actually believe in LGBTQ rights, has called LGBTQ people filth in this country, has said that women are not called to lead, other crazy, crazy things that do not belong in the mouth or coming out of the mouth of somebody that wants to be the next governor of this state and is responsible for protecting the people of North Carolina. And so, again, realmarkrobinson.com is where you can go. And we're voting for Josh Stein this year to be our next governor.